Galactic peace negotiations collapsed because one human stood up and walked away, reached its dramatic apex when Ambassador Jake Morrison, having discovered the 12-species summit, was an elaborate charade, broadcast incriminating evidence to every screen in the Grand Assembly. Defying threats and protocol, he declared Earth would not participate in this cosmic deception, then simply walked out, igniting a revolution that would transform the galaxy forever. The gleaming spires of Nexus Prime spiraled outward like metallic petals of an impossible flower, each arm housing one of the 12 species that had gathered for the Galactic Peace Summit. From the viewport of the Earth Federation transport vessel, Ambassador Jake Morrison studied the massive space station with a mixture of awe and trepidation. After 300 years since humanity's inclusion in the galactic alliances, this would be the first time Earth held a seat at the High Council of Peace negotiations. "Quite the sight, isn't it?" said Lisa Harper, his military attaché, as she joined him at the viewport. Her uniform bore the silver and blue insignia of Earth Command, impeccably pressed as always. Jake nodded, running a hand through his graying hair. At 42, he had spent nearly 2 decades in diplomatic service, but nothing had prepared him for this level of responsibility. 12 species, each with their own agendas, grievances, and demands, he murmured. And somehow we're supposed to broker peace when some of these civilizations have been in conflict for millennia. "That's why they sent you," Lisa replied with confidence. "Your reputation precedes you. The Andean Accords, the Antarctic Resource Division, you've proven you can make impossible parties see reason." Jake smiled thinly. "Those were humans negotiating with humans. This is—" he gestured toward the looming station. "Something else entirely." The transport shuddered slightly as it docked with Nexus Prime. Captain Roy Henderson's voice came over the comm system. "Ambassador, we've secured connection. Station atmosphere is confirmed Earth-compatible in your designated sectors. Medical has cleared your team for disembarkation." "Thank you, Captain," Jake responded. He straightened his formal diplomatic attire, Earth's traditional blue and silver, designed to convey both authority and openness. "Time to meet our galactic neighbors." The Earth delegation consisted of just 4 key personnel: Jake as lead ambassador, Lisa as security and military liaison, Dr. Patricia Wells as xenobiology specialist, and Captain Henderson as military advisor. They had been briefed extensively on the 12 species that would be present, though actual face-to-face interaction with most had been limited to preliminary communications. As they stepped through the airlock into Nexus Prime, Jake was immediately struck by the scale of the station. The central hub rose hundreds of meters overhead, with transparent sections revealing the stars beyond. Each species had been allocated its own sector of the station, with environmental controls tailored to their biological needs. "Ambassador Morrison," a melodic voice called. Jake turned to see a tall, willowy figure approaching. The Xanthari ambassador's translucent skin revealed pulsing organs beneath, shifting in colors that were said to reflect their emotional state. Currently, they displayed a calm, blue-green hue. "I am Zariel, third speaker of the Xanthari Collective. We are pleased Earth has joined these discussions." Jake bowed slightly, a gesture his briefings had told him the Xanthari would recognize. "The honor is ours. Third speaker. Earth hopes to contribute meaningfully to lasting peace." "Such optimism." Zariel's skin flickered briefly to amber. "You will find that lasting peace has complex definitions among the 12. Before Jake could probe further, they were approached by a hovering sphere surrounded by Mista Hydron representative, whose water-based physiology required constant humidity. "Earth being Morrison!" The sphere pulsed with light as it spoke, translation devices converting its pressure wave language to standard galactic. "Hydron welcomes you. Your world is predominantly water, like our home. Perhaps you will understand our concerns better than others." The diplomatic pleasantries continued as representatives from each species made their introductions. The reptilian Kriller, with their ornate battle scars proudly displayed. The insectoid Vex, moving in perfect synchronization as if sharing a hive mind. The amorphous shapers who could restructure their silicon-based bodies at will. The massive, four-armed Duraxians, whose every movement seemed calculated for maximum efficiency. The ghostly ethereals who existed partially in another dimension. The crystalline lumina whose bodies refracted light in mesmerizing patterns. The plant-like Florians whose speech was accompanied by puffs of aromatic spores. The mechanoid nexus, who had long since transcended their biological origins. And finally, the Quor, whose bear-like appearance belied their reputation as the galaxy's most shrewd negotiators. By the time they reached their assigned quarters, Jake's head was swimming with information. The delegation suite was spacious by Earth standards, with separate rooms for each member and a common area for meetings. "Initial impressions?" Jake asked, as his team gathered for a debrief. Dr. Patricia Wells, a tall woman with copper skin and close-cropped silver hair, spoke first. "The Zenthari showed unusual interest in you personally, Ambassador. Their chromatic shifts indicated curiosity beyond diplomatic protocol." Lisa nodded in agreement. "The Kriller barely acknowledged our presence, while the Hydron seemed almost eager. We're being sized up, categorized according to each species' agenda." Captain Henderson, a stocky man with military bearing despite his civilian attire, added, "The station's security protocols are impressive, but designed for observation rather than protection. Every corridor, every room is being monitored. We should assume nothing we say or do is private." Jake sighed, loosening his formal collar. "So, a typical diplomatic mission, just on a grander scale. We'll proceed as planned, observe today, assess the power dynamics, and engage substantively tomorrow when the formal sessions begin." As his team dispersed to settle in, Jake sat at the desk terminal to review the summit agenda once more. A small notification blinked in the corner of his screen, a message marked with encryption that wasn't Earth Command standard. Curious, he opened it. The screen filled with financial data, military reports, and private communications, all compiled from different species networks. Jake's pulse quickened as he began to understand what he was seeing. Trade routes designed to appear disrupted, but actually operating at increased capacity. Weapons manufacturers showing record profits across multiple worlds. Military deployments that seemed responsive to attacks, but were actually positioned days before incidents occurred. The message contained a single line of text. "The peace you seek is not the peace they sell." Jake stared at the data, his diplomatic training immediately analyzing its implications. If authentic, these documents suggested the conflicts between the species were being orchestrated, not by governments necessarily, but by corporate and military interests across all 12 worlds who profited from controlled conflict. He was about to call his team when another thought struck him. This could be a test or a trap. Sharing potentially falsified information could destroy Earth's credibility at its first major galactic summit. He needed to verify before acting. Jake encrypted the files with his personal codes and powered down the terminal. Tomorrow would bring the first formal session, and he needed to observe the proceedings with this new, disturbing perspective in mind. Sleep eluded him that night, his mind racing with possibilities. Was Earth being manipulated? Were they being invited to join a grand charade rather than actual peace negotiations? Or was someone trying to compromise Earth's position before talks even began? The first day of formal negotiations began in the station's Grand Assemblia, massive chamber, with 12 distinct seating areas arranged in a perfect circle. Jake noticed that each section was tailored to the physiological needs of its occupants. Water-filled enclosures for the Hydron, low-gravity fields for the Ethereals, nutrient-rich soil beds for the Florians. Earth's section, as the newest arrival, was positioned between the Zenthari and the Krillara. Placement Jake suspected was deliberate, putting them between two historically opposed factions. The proceedings began with formal statements from each delegation. Jake listened carefully as each species presented their grievances and demands. The Xanthari claimed rights to mine asteroids in disputed territories, citing resource scarcity. The Hydron objected, citing environmental concerns about mining runoff, affecting nearby water planets. The Kriller accused both of encroaching on their neutral space lanes. The pattern continued, each species presenting reasonable concerns that just happened to conflict with others' interests. From his diplomatic experience, Jake recognized the careful choreography of it all. These weren't spontaneous complaints, but well-rehearsed positions designed to seem insurmountable. When Earth's turn came, Jake delivered a measured address about humanity's hope for genuine cooperation and their willingness to mediate disputes as a neutral party. He caught several representatives exchanging glances during his speech, though their alien expressions were difficult to interpret. The day concluded with committees being formed to address specific disputes. As Jake and his team returned to their quarters, Lisa voiced what they were all thinking. "That was theater, not negotiation," she said flatly. "No one moved an inch from their opening positions." "It's only the first day," Jake cautioned, though he privately agreed. "Ambassador," Dr. Wells interjected. "I've been monitoring physiological responses as best I can." The Xanthari and Quor representatives showed signs consistent with anticipation rather than frustration when disputes arose. It's as if they expected, perhaps wanted the deadlock. Captain Henderson nodded grimly. Classic military strategy. Create the appearance of attempting resolution while ensuring it remains just out of reach. "Let's not jump to conclusions," Jake said, though the mysterious data he'd received weighed heavily on his mind. "We'll continue observing tomorrow. Look for patterns, inconsistencies, anything that might indicate whether these conflicts are genuine or manufactured." The second day followed a similar pattern. Committees reported no progress, new grievances were aired, and proposals for resolution were rejected on technical grounds. Jake noticed that flare-ups of tension always seemed to occur at specific intervals, almost as if timed for maximum impact. That evening, he shared his observations with Lisa. "Have you noticed how the Kriller always raise objections precisely 40 minutes into each session?" Lisa frowned, reviewing her notes. "You're right. And the Hydron delegation always calls for environmental impact studies at the 2-hour mark, regardless of the topic." "It's not just timing," Jake added. "Watch tomorrow how the Xanthari third speaker uses the phrase existential necessity before each deadlock. It's like a signal." Together, they began charting the proceedings, looking for patterns. By the third day, they had mapped out what appeared to be a carefully orchestrated dance of disagreement. Conflicts arose predictably, tensions escalated according to schedule, and resolutions were proposed that everyone knew would be rejected. That night, Jake finally shared the mysterious data with his team. "I received this before the summit began. I wanted to verify its authenticity before bringing it to you." They gathered around as he displayed the encrypted files. Dr. Wells gasped as she recognized shipping manifests for biological weapons supposedly banned by all 12 species. Captain Henderson's expression darkened as he identified military deployment orders that preceded the surprise attacks they were supposedly responding to. "This is extensive," Lisa said, scanning through financial records showing how corporations across multiple worlds profited from the ongoing conflicts. "If this is accurate, then the entire summit is a sham." "The question is, who sent it?" Captain Henderson asked. "And why to you specifically?" "I don't know," Jake admitted, "but it aligns with what we've been observing. These peace negotiations follow the same script every cycle. Minor concessions, major standoffs. Enough progress to justify continuing, but never enough to resolve anything permanently." "Earth is the newcomer," Dr. Wells observed. "Perhaps someone hopes we'll disrupt the pattern." Or they're setting us up to take the fall when this cycle inevitably fails, Henderson countered. Jake stared at the data, his diplomatic training warring with his personal ethics. We need more confirmation. Let's continue documenting the patterns in tomorrow's sessions. And I want to try something a small deviation from the expected script, just to see how they react. The fourth day of negotiations brought discussions of trade route access, a topic that historically led to heated exchanges between the Kriller and the mechanoid nexus. Jake waited for the precise moment when, according to their observations, the Kriller representative would raise objections about security concerns. Just before that moment arrived, Jake requested the floor and proposed a compromise solution that addressed both species' core concerns. One, that was reasonable enough that outright rejection would seem suspicious. The chamber fell silent. Jake watched as the Kriller representative's scales shifted color rapidly, a sign of confusion or distress. The Nexus representative's optical sensors flickered in patterns Jake couldn't interpret. Finally, after an uncomfortable pause, the Xanthari third speaker rose and suggested the proposal required further study by all parties, effectively tabling it without rejection. The session continued, but Jake noticed subtle changes. Glances were exchanged. The timing of subsequent objections was slightly off. Some representatives appeared to be receiving new instructions through their communication devices. We disrupted their script, Lisa whispered as they observed the proceedings. That evening, Jake received another encrypted message, this one from Earth Command itself. The directive was clear. Earth's position was to support Xanthari mining rights, while expressing environmental concerns aligned with the Hydron. In other words, they were being instructed to choose sides in a conflict that, increasingly, appeared to be orchestrated. These orders align perfectly with the pattern, Jake told his team, displaying the directive. We're being assigned our role in their performance. What are you going to do? Lisa asked. Jake was silent for a long moment. I need to know one thing from each of you. Did you join diplomatic service to perpetuate conflicts or to resolve them? The answer was unanimous. Whatever Jake decided, they would support him. The breaking point came on the fifth day. News reached the summit of an attack on a Hydron research facility in a disputed sector. The Hydron accused the Xanthari. The Xanthari suggested Krillar involvement. The Kriller implied Earth might be responsible as the newcomer, trying to establish its position. An emergency session was called. As accusations flew, Jake noticed something. The attack had supposedly occurred just hours ago. Yet each delegation already had detailed response plans, economic impact assessments, and military readiness reports. They were prepared for this, he murmured to Lisa. All of them. As the chamber descended into choreographed chaos, Jake made his decision. He activated his communication console and transferred all the compiled data, the leaked documents, their pattern analysis, the contradictory orders to the central display system of the Grand Assembly. The chamber fell silent as financial records, military orders, and corporate profits appeared on every screen. Jake rose to his feet. Distinguished representatives, he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. For 5 days, I have observed these proceedings with growing concern. What I witnessed was not negotiation, but performance, a carefully orchestrated simulation of diplomacy designed to maintain the appearance of seeking peace while ensuring conflicts continue. Murmurs spread through the chamber as delegates viewed the data. These records show what many of you already know, Jake continued. The conflicts between our species are not inevitable, but engineered by weapons manufacturers who profit from arms sales, by resource corporations who exploit disputed territories while negotiations stall, by security firms who guarantee protection from threats they themselves help create. The Xanthari third speaker rose, skin flashing angry red. Ambassador Morrison, these accusations are outrageous. You cannot possibly verify. I can and have, Jake interrupted, displaying more data. These are shipping records from your own central asteroid belt. Third speaker. They show resource extraction increased 300% during the last cycle of failed peace talks. These are profit statements from your largest weapons manufacturer, showing record dividends paid to shareholders, including several members of your own delegation. He turned to the Hydran representative. And these are environmental impact studies your own scientists conducted, showing minimal runoff concerns from Xanthari mining operation studies you buried, while publicly demanding more research. One by one, Jake presented evidence implicating each delegation in the charade. Some representatives remained impassive, others grew visibly agitated, and a few notably, among the younger members of several delegations, appeared genuinely shocked. The Earth Federation will not be complicit in this deception, Jake declared. We came here seeking genuine peace, not to become another actor in this performance. Therefore, I am withdrawing Earth's delegation from these proceedings, effective immediately. The chamber erupted. Some delegates demanded Jake be detained. Others called for verification of his claims. A few sat in stunned silence. As security personnel moved toward the Earth section, Jake raised his hand. Before you attempt to suppress this information, know that it has already been transmitted to independent media outlets across all 12 worlds. The people you claim to represent will know the truth within hours. This was a bluff. Jake had only just released the data within the chamber, but it had the desired effect. The security forces hesitated, looking to their respective delegations for guidance. Come, Jake said quietly to his team. We're leaving. As they walked out of the Grand Assembly, Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Whatever came next, diplomatic isolation, professional disgrace, perhaps even personal danger, he had followed his conscience. They returned to their quarters to collect their belongings, expecting to be escorted off the station at any moment. Instead, they received a strange assortment of messages, some threatening, others supportive, and many simply confused. It's spreading, Lisa reported, monitoring communications. The data is being shared across networks on multiple worlds. There's chaos in some governmental centers as people demand explanations. The Florian delegation has publicly acknowledged the accuracy of their portion of the data, Dr. Wells added, reviewing incoming reports. They're claiming their representatives were acting without governmental authorization. Captain Henderson looked up from his security feed. Several delegations appear to be in heated discussions among themselves. The younger Xanthari representatives seemed to be confronting the third speaker. Jake nodded, feeling both vindication and concern. We've disrupted their system. Now, we need to get back to Earth before they decide we're more useful as scapegoats than whistleblowers. Their transport was prepared within hours. As they made their way to the docking bay, they were surprised to find representatives from several species waiting for them, not the senior diplomats, but younger members of various delegations. A junior Lumina stepped forward, her crystalline form glittering under the station lights. Ambassador Morrison, what you did was either very brave or very foolish, perhaps both. But it was necessary. Some of us have suspected the truth for some time, but lack the evidence or position to speak out. What happens now? Jake asked. Chaos, for a time, the Lumina admitted. But perhaps honest chaos is better than dishonest order. Already, protests are forming on several worlds as people learn how they've been manipulated. Will you be safe? Dr. Wells asked, genuine concern in her voice. Not all of us, the Lumina replied solemnly. But we've established our own communication network, independent of official channels. We will continue to spread the truth and push for genuine negotiations. As the Earth delegation boarded their transport, Jake felt a mixture of hope and uncertainty. They had done what they believed was right, but the consequences would ripple across the galaxy in ways they couldn't predict. The journey back to Earth was tense. They monitored communications from across the 12 worlds, watching as the revelations sparked reactions ranging from denial to outrage, to calls for revolution. Corporate stocks plummeted. Military leaders resigned or were forced out. Political protests erupted on multiple planets. Upon their return, Jake expected to face censure from Earth Command for defying orders and potentially damaging Earth's position in galactic politics. Instead, he found the political landscape had shifted dramatically. The public, upon learning how close Earth had come to becoming complicit in the galactic deception, largely supported his actions. Earth Command, caught between their private directives and public opinion, issued a carefully worded statement supporting transparency in diplomatic relations. In the weeks that followed, Jake and his team were debriefed extensively. They provided all their evidence, analysis, and observations to investigators who were trying to determine how deeply Earth's own officials had been involved in the galactic scheme. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the old order was crumbling. The Zenthari third speaker was removed from office amid revelations of personal enrichment from weapons manufacturing. The Krillar military command underwent a purge of officers found to have staged border incidents. The Hydran representative who had demanded endless environmental studies was discovered to have financial ties to competing resource extraction companies. Most significantly, informal cooperation began to emerge between species. Without the artificial constraints of the official peace process, scientists, traders, and ordinary citizens began establishing direct connections. The Florians shared agricultural techniques with Earth. Hydran water purification technology was adapted for use on drought-stricken human colonies. Zenthari mining engineers collaborated with Krillar security experts to establish safe extraction protocols in formerly disputed territories. 3 months after the collapsed summit, Jake received a surprising communication. Representatives from all 11 other species' new representatives, untainted by the previous system, requested Earth's help in convening a new type of peace conference. They called it, with pointed sincerity, the Honest Peace Summit. Jake and his team were asked to help design the new negotiation framework. They proposed radical transparency. All sessions would be publicly broadcast. Financial interests of all delegates would be disclosed. And most importantly, the physical arrangement would change from 12 separate sections to a single round table where all species sat as equals. The new summit prioritized issues of common concern, environmental protection, medical research, agricultural development before addressing territorial disputes. When conflicts did arise, they were acknowledged openly rather than manipulated for advantage. Progress was neither smooth nor guaranteed. Centuries of distrust couldn't be erased overnight. Some factions on various worlds resisted the new approach, preferring the predictable profits of managed conflict to the uncertainties of genuine peace. But the momentum toward cooperation proved difficult to reverse. 6 months after Jake had walked out of the Nexus Prime Station, the Galactic Conflict Monitor reported a 90% reduction in cross-species violence. Former weapons manufacturing facilities were being converted to produce medical equipment, agricultural tools, and environmental remediation technology. Trade routes once restricted by artificial security concerns now flowed freely, reducing scarcity and its attendant conflicts. Jake stood at the viewport of Earth's lunar station, looking back at the blue-green sphere of his homeworld. Lisa joined him, as she had on the approach to Nexus Prime that now seemed a lifetime ago. "Did you ever imagine that walking away from negotiations would lead to more peace than staying would have?" she asked. Jake shook his head. "I just couldn't be part of the lie anymore. I never expected it to cascade like this." "One person refusing to play their assigned role," Lisa mused. "That's all it took to bring down a system that had manipulated 12 species for generations." "Not one person," Jake corrected her. "We all made that choice together, and thousands across the galaxy made similar choices when they learned the truth." They stood in comfortable silence, watching Earth rotate slowly below them. Beyond the viewport, ships from various species docked and departed from the lunar station. Scientists, traders, and diplomats engaged in genuine exchange, rather than choreographed conflict. The next summit begins next week, Lisa reminded him. The agenda includes establishing a permanent multi-species research institute and drafting common environmental protection standards. Jake nodded, feeling a cautious optimism he hadn't experienced in years. We've made a start. A real one this time. The road ahead would not be easy. Some conflicts were based on genuine resource limitations or cultural misunderstandings, rather than manufactured tensions. Some parties still benefited from division and would work to restore it. The truth had created opportunity, not certainty. But as Jake prepared for the upcoming summit, he felt confident in one fundamental reality: genuine peace, built on honesty and mutual benefit, was proving more powerful than the artificial stability of managed conflict. All it had taken to begin the transformation was one human standing up and walking away from a lie. In the communications center of the lunar station, reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy, the Core and Ethereals establishing joint artistic exchanges, Nexus and Shapers collaborating on adaptive architecture, Lumina crystal technology being combined with Vex agricultural methods to create sustainable food production in harsh environments. "We're going to need a bigger table at the next summit," Dr. Wells commented, as she reviewed the growing list of cooperative projects seeking official recognition. Jake smiled. "I think that's a problem we can solve." Captain Henderson, reviewing security protocols for the upcoming summit, added, "The Weapons Manufacturers Coalition has filed a formal protest, claiming the new peace initiatives violate trade agreements." "Let them protest," Jake replied. "They're swimming against the tide now." As the Earth delegation prepared for this new chapter in galactic relations, Jake reflected on how close they had come to becoming just another player in the grand deception. It would have been easier, certainly. The path of least resistance usually was. But the harder path had led to something genuine, imperfect, challenging, but real. The monitor in the communications center displayed a news feed from the Zenthari homeworld, where the new governing council was dismantling the military-industrial complex that had directed their foreign policy for generations. Similar scenes played out across a dozen worlds as ordinary citizens reclaimed their destinies from those who had profited from their conflicts. "Ambassador," a young aide called, interrupting his thoughts. "We're receiving a transmission from the Nexus Prime Station. The Reconstruction Committee is requesting your input on the design for the new assembly chamber." Jake nodded, turning from the viewport toward the future that awaited. "Tell them we have some ideas to share."